Yeah, I just I was trying to get one of my kids to just settle it down a little. So you might hear Leslie chasing after the bunny or something, or the kids fighting over the bunny. I don't know. So I have been kind of experiencing struggles. Obviously, I think we all have since March globally. So Matt, I definitely hear you when you say that, you noticed within your team, because just when I go out in public, I've noticed people being snide or sarcastic with each other, just plain rude. I've seen it. It's so bizarre to me because I feel like I see a parking lot, just people like ready to physically fight over a parking space. And it's just I feel like we've just kind of we as Christians have the opportunity to share hope and share light and share joy. And so I think that if we can do that, people will notice, hey, this is different. This is not what we're used to seeing out in the world, especially right now. People are just at their limit with coping. They've had it up to here and beyond, and they maybe they don't have the joy that we have. Gosh, dang it! Sorry, my bunny just bit me because I'm in her way or something. um, so I a little bit of my portions of what I'm kind of bringing forth in my message today have changed a little bit. So it was just kind of like this morning as I was going through it, it was just like I was like being filled up, like, oh, God gave me more scriptures to bring up. So, and it's crazy because it's like I don't even know all these scriptures. It was just like landing there in my lap, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna run with that. So a couple of these like foundational scriptures that I want to bring up today. So my message today is surviving the Corona coaster. So I stole the Corona coaster from a meme I found on social media, and we all just got put on the Corona coaster, and some of us are terrified of rides, right? Some of us are terrified of heights and going super fast on something that we can't control. So I feel like some days we feel safe and secure, we're buckled in, right? And sometimes we feel like we're buckled in against our will and we can't get off the ride. We're yelling to the operator, stop it, please stop the ride, I want to get off. But we're shouting into the void. There's nobody there that can stop it. So what are we, I want to bring some perspective to that. And what do we do in our struggles? What do we do in our situations? So some foundational scriptures, getting back to that. 1 Peter 4:12-13, Peter says, beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing has happened unto you. But rejoice. He says that rejoice. Inasmuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. And then we go into James 1:2-4. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And also John 16:33, we're here directly from Jesus, and he says, in the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Or some translations say, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So that is what has been just uplifting me excuse me, through my struggles, that we can rejoice. So where does this joy come from? I struggle, I battle with depression, I battle with anxiety. And some days I have I just tank, and it feels like it's a really desperate situation. It feels like it's just hopeless. Like, God, why is this happening? Um, so I have to kind of remind myself, I have to read these scriptures, remember them, and say, hey, it's, I can rejoice. So I'm going to start kind of getting into that. Riding the roller coaster. Some days I'm doing great. Some days I am fine. Everything's wonderful. I'm doing okay in my little bubble. But other days I just want to be comatose. Like, can you just put me in a coma until this whole thing is over? Can I just hibernate and come back out when, we don't have to live in a world with masks and COVID and fear and just the uncertainty that is surrounding a lot of us right now. So 2 weeks ago, I was really, really struggling, and I just wanted an escape. I wanted to just stop the planet. I want off. And so I just turned on the TV, and I just wanted a short break from a world where COVID didn't exist. So I turned on the TV, and I was watching this medical drama, and of course it panned back to the beginning of the pandemic, and that's kind of where the episode had started. And I was just crying 3 minutes in, and I was like, I can't watch this. I'm trying to get away from this right now. So I go to watch something else, and it's the same thing. It's a different show, but it's the same thing. They're dealing with the pandemic. They're talking about the protests and riots, and I was just so frustrated. I was like, come on, man, I'm trying to catch a break here. Why does it have to be all of, just the pandemic and the protests and the riots? So frustrated, I just turned the TV off. I wanted to throw the remote at it, and I may have yelled a little bit at the TV, like, come on, I want a break. But it was like God had intervened and had said, come on, you know that what you need, you're not going to find on the TV. You're not going to find it on social media. What you need is in my word. So I picked up my Bible and I just started reading, and I was like, wow, talk about divine intervention. Like this is exactly what I needed. I needed to know that there is a way through all this chaos, that God is real, that he cares. And I needed assurance of his provision. I needed to know that all of my concerns is there going to be another toilet paper shortage? Am I going to be able to buy the food that I need to feed my family? Am I going to be able to get these necessities? Am I going to be able to continue to homeschool my kids, because I'm homeschooling. I'm not doing the distance learning. So I'm the one responsible for the curriculum and the daily lesson plans and what I'm putting together. And I kind of need to keep it together, so to speak, so that I can work through the lesson plans with my kids. And I'm like, gosh, am I going to be able to hold it together to do that? And, God, where are you in all of this? Hey, Leslie. So I was looking at the Bible, and I came across Exodus 16, and we learned there that the Israelites were in the wilderness with Moses, and they're murmuring, right? They're hungry, they're discontent, they're tired, they've been just in the wilderness and they've been wandering, and they're saying, did God lead us out of Egypt to just kill us en masse in the desert, in the wilderness? Well, we're hungry, we're starving. So they're kind of starting to rebel against Aaron and Moses. And so Aaron and Moses go to God, and God provides manna and quail for the people. Like, it rains manna, it rains like this bread, right? And I just thought that was so interesting that while it did that, God said, you can eat to the full. You can have as much as you need for your household to the full, So all the bread you can eat in one day. So every day they had to rely, hold on, let's see, they had to rely on God for that day. So they couldn't collect more than what they could eat in one day unless it was the day. The only exception to that was unless it was the day before Sabbath, which they could collect 2 days so that they would be able to rest on the Sabbath. They wouldn't be out gathering. So to me, that's like, wow, God gives us what we need for today. And that was also, what's also I thought was also interesting about that was that it was a test. It says that in Exodus 16, God says that it's a test for my people. Will they trust me to provide for them every day? Or are they going to rush and kind of hoard and try to store up this bread and this manna? Are they going to do that? So they were able to trust God for that provision, that he gives us what we need for today. And that, I mean, of course, that's manna. That's more of like a tangible thing. But I mean, how cool would that be? What a sight would that be to see, just like bread raining down. But in James 1, back to James 1, 5-8, he says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose he will receive anything from the Lord. He's a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. So I think wisdom there, to me, I interpreted that as he's not talking about intellect. He's talking about, in a sense, discernment. So we have a lot of tough choices to make these days. And so I feel like we can go to God with those choices when we're stuck. Like, hey, God, all I see around me is chaos. The arrows that fly by day, the arrows that fly by night. And I don't know which direction to go. I don't know. Work says I have the option to work in the office or I can work from home. Or I have the option to homeschool or send my kids to school. Or should I move, or should I leave this situation? Should I change careers? I mean, we all have different types of decisions that we're trying to make right now. And so I think that wisdom for me can be applied as, when I get stuck, I can go to God and say, God, what would you have me do? And he'll provide it. I can trust him that he will give me the answer, and trust that it's good for my family. Hold on, Lissy. We love the bunny, but you're going to have to put her down, okay? All right. So then we go on to Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. And Jesus tells us, therefore, I tell you, stop being worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body as to what you will wear. And then he continues on into verse 34 saying, so do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So that's really hard, right? If you're like me and you have anxiety and you're just struggling, that is really hard to hear. It's like, what, Jesus? What do you mean I can't plan for tomorrow? I'm worried here. I have a lot of concerns. But I think that if we can bring those concerns to him, and just all of our thoughts, he tells us, cast your cares on me. I feel like that's so beautiful. And it's a good reminder, because I kind of want to hold on to my worry. I want to hold on to those anxiety, even though there's literally nothing I can do about it. So just thinking kind of about, what do I do in these situations? So I pray. And then what have I done in the past? When I face trials and adversity, what have I done? And I think about other people, some of the most resilient people that I've ever met in my life. They have said, what can I control? So when there's chaos everywhere and it seems like an impossible, desperate, hopeless situation, they ask, what can I control? And notice they don't always sit there and ask, why me? Poor me. And it is so easy, even for me, to get caught up in the why me, poor me. Um, but as Christians, we don't have to unpack and live there in the why me. We don't have to sit there and live in our sorrows. We have a God that is going to get us through, right? So they ask, what do I need to get through? What do I need to do to get through today? And what can I control? So that one is a tough one for me, because I have like this illusion in my brain that's like, oh, you can control everything. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not God. But I run around sometimes with like a chicken with its head cut off, thinking I can control a lot more than I can actually control. And I drive myself crazy doing it. But what we can control is something that we maybe don't always like to hear, but it's our attitudes. Our attitudes and our reaction, our response is absolutely something within our control. We count it all joy, right? When we experience trials and tribulations, and how hard is that to have joy, right? It's crazy. It's crazy to see somebody dancing in the storm, right? But that can be us as Christians. We're supposed to be the salt and the light. And when I say like the salt, we're not supposed to, I'm not talking about being salty as it's more contemporary meaning, which is cantankerous, right? If you're salty, it's like, oh, you're kind of, you have a bad attitude towards someone or a certain situation. I don't think that's what God meant when he said you're the salt and the light. We don't have to be salty like everyone else that we're, maybe coming into contact with lately, just out in the general public or within our workplaces. So if we're to be the salt and the light, though, we have to remember to be in the world and not of it. Joy is not a feeling. It's a response. It's a choice. And that response sometimes looks a lot like patient endurance, right? So the Greek meaning of the word patient, according to Strong's Concordance, is to have a cheerful or hopeful endurance. What? A cheerful or hopeful endurance. Like, we are going through one of the strangest, most bizarre times that, I'm 31 now, that I have ever lived through in my life. I mean, certainly I've had my fair share of like personal crisis, of personal tragedy. Just growing up, I could give you just a list of like the craziness that I grew up in. Just I won't really get into that now, but there was a lot of suffering and a lot of tragedy and a lot of uncertainty. So to have this patience, a cheerful or hopeful endurance, wow. So we can find a lot of good in that. We can rejoice in sorrow, according to 2 Corinthians 6:10 in our reading. And furthermore, Romans 5:3-5 says, and not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. Wow, how powerful is that? So this whole thing, this whole pandemic, the restrictions, the mess can be used for God's glory. God's glory can be revealed in it. And I'm not saying that God caused it. He does not need this pandemic for his purposes, but he does take and work good out of these situations. This pandemic certainly is not a surprise to God, and he allowed it to happen, but he's still a good God. And his glory is still going to be revealed through this. So I hope that encourages you guys today. And I don't want to make light of or minimize the struggle. I don't want to have you guys feel like this is a message of, put a smile on your face. I'm not, I hope you guys don't take it that way, because it's totally not my heart. And I didn't get the feeling that that was God's heart when he was kind of, helping me work through this when I was ready to break my TV in half, throw a chair through a window. But man, if we realize that, it's okay to struggle, it's okay to feel that pain. I just feel like it's also confirmed in 2 Corinthians 12:9-10. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So we can control our attitudes. We can control, we can choose joy.
We can control our body.
Yep, we can control our body, as Leslie says. So I think part of that, though, too, is what we consume, right? So we have to guard our hearts. We have to guard our minds. And it's really hard to check social media or the news without feeling like the message being relayed is the sky is falling, right? Like Chicken Little, like that. I just feel like, wow, I can't read the news without any of that happening. So Proverbs 4:23 says, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. So the things that we watch or read seep into our hearts. But we also can control that. We can control what we are consuming, what we are feeding into our minds, what we are feeding into our hearts. So I'm not suggesting that everybody just kind of, stick your head in the sand and it'll just all go away. You don't need to know. But just know your limit for that and your tolerance for that sort of thing. And the moment that you feel, if you're reading social media, you're scrolling or doing what my aunt says, doom scrolling. So that her doom scrolling to her means like when you're online, you're surfing the internet and you're reading all these news articles or these, forums, what people have to say about, the sky is falling. It's not going to get better. The polar ice caps have melted, blah, 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 whatever. Know your tolerance and know your limit for that. So I think it's really hard to avoid that. But I feel like we all know kind of like if we need to avoid that, we can take a break a day or two from social media or from reading or watching the news. So really we just have to be more mindful of what we're consuming, because when we start to hear those news headlines or read those, social media posts about the sky is falling, then it's like our focus starts to turn inward, and it's all of a sudden it becomes, I guess I better go, buy a whole pallet of toilet paper from Costco, or I better go, yeah, I better buy, all this stuff and just try to stock up. And, now I'm going to worry about my job. Now I'm going to worry about this. I heard the industry is really bad for this field right now. So now that affects my job. I'm really going to worry about that. I'm really going to worry. So we get to set the controls on that. We can't control what the economy does. We cannot control how this pandemic plays out. We can't control, what the government does or doesn't do, what kind of restrictions go into place. We don't get to decide how many people can or can't be at our Thanksgiving gatherings. There's a lot of real pain in this. There's a lot of real hurt that we don't really get a say in, except for to control what we're consuming, control our attitudes, and choose joy. So let's focus on putting our cares and our concerns in the hands of a very capable God who knit us together in our mother's wombs and numbered the very hairs on our head. He knows the number of hairs on our head. And some of us have less, and that's okay. Some of us have more. But God outnumbered them. He knows. So let's try to work on that. And this is as much for me as it is. Like I said, I feel like God just really put this on me 2 weeks ago and said, focus on me. You don't need to focus on all this external stuff that's bringing you down. You can choose joy in these trials and tribulations. With that, I'd like to kind of conclude and give my blessing to you guys today from 1 Thessalonians 5:23. And the very God of peace sanctify you wholly. And I pray, God, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's it. That's what I got for today. I hope that it encouraged you. And again, I really hope that you guys didn't feel like your pain or your struggles were minimized, because that wasn't what I got from God at all. And that wasn't on my heart. Just that, even in the midst of this beyond crazy chaos, that we can choose joy. We can choose to not repay evil for evil, right? But we can bless our enemies and pray for those who persecute us.
Mercedes, the next